All right, so today we're going to go over doing a start of care admission. We'll go over it as if you were doing an OASIS, and then the other way would just be doing a regular service note, but it'll be an eval note if you are not the primary discipline. So everything else is going to be the same for all disciplines, except your service notes will be unique for your discipline and your care needs, of course. Here's one of those pop-ups. I don't know if you've seen those before yet, but be sure and read them. We are putting a release out tonight, and this is what I was talking about. Make sure you guys aren't in there, or at least save and close your work just prior to the time. I believe it's 10 p.m. Eastern tonight, and it's usually every other Thursday, but we're going to have a few for the next few Thursdays in a row. All right, so we have our admission patient. Right here, you hover over it now. Here's the PT admit one. So you'll hover over it and you'll see that it's a PT admit visit. You'll click on that visit, choose, and by the way, on that those pop-ups, if you don't hit this do not show again, every time you click on a new link, it will keep popping up. So just be sure and hit do not show again. You'll still be able to view that message over here on the left under the announcements. Okay, so now let's go back to this. You'll click on the visit on the data service, and you're going to end up choosing Add Page Service Note Assessment. You're going to choose the OASIS Integrated Assessment, if it's a start of care, rock, discharge, etc. And then you're going to hit Continue. It's going to, again, I've mentioned this before, I believe, but make sure you choose the correct note type or OASIS type, because CareEfficient does have time point sequence logic built in. So it's going to look to see if you have a start of care on a new admit first, and that's the only option you're going to have. Then after that, you're going to always have the option for another follow-up. But then again, the patient needs to be in a certain status to get your correct OASIS type. Plus, if you're doing like a rock, the transfer OASIS has to be in there prior to getting the option to do the resumption of care OASIS. So if you do not see the right one here, you need to stop and figure out why, so that you don't end up entering the wrong type of service note. All we can do is delete them, and you'd have to start over. So don't waste your time if it's the incorrect OASIS or other service note types. Hit Save, and it will bring you into your the edit mode of your OASIS Integrated Assessment. Again, on the header and supply section, it's going to be the same for every service note. This is where you enter your time in, your time out, and you get your patient signature when you guys are going to start doing that. So initially, when you first come in here, you'll know your time in, but you won't know your time out. So you're going to just enter that time in, hit Next, and start answering everything. Now, on these grayed out OASIS questions up here at the top, you still need to review those, make sure those are correct. The start of care date's correct, the spelling of the name, address, zip code, Medicare number, date of birth and gender, all that stuff. If this is incorrect, it needs to be corrected elsewhere. So your birth date, gender, patient name, spelling, that would all be under the patient profile tab. In the patient encounter, that would need to be corrected before this was completed. The Medicare number would have to be entered under the payer. Some of these checkboxes will be pre-populated based off what's going on in the encounter. So if you already had their race entered, that will automatically fill this out for you, but you could adjust that if needed. Same thing with the payment sources. I put 2 payers on this patient, so it's checking both of these. But you can make sure that's correct as well. All of these square boxes, they are multi-select, so you would be able to select more than one if you had that, if you need that option. Again, hit Next. Every time you hit Next, it does save and sends us that information from that section, so we have it online, and you can just keep moving forward from there. I'm not going to fill this entire thing out, but I'll show you a few things. I think I showed you some of the service note functions before, but I do want to show you again. On the diagnoses, I know it's going to go through coding, but you do have to enter a generic code to even save your note. So if you know the ICD-10 code, or if you have a generic one your agency wants you to use, just enter that code, hit the drop-down box, and it's going to filter down to just that one code out of the 72,000. There is another way you could add codes. If you were to type in essential, then it would filter all the codes down to have that word essential in there. But you do need to be careful, because if you didn't type it essential parentheses, primary parentheses, hypertension, if you don't have the parentheses in there, then it wouldn't show up from the list. So it's easier just to hit the ICD-10 code. You would choose the symptom control rating and onset or exacerbation date right here. I know you guys don't do codes, but it does have the opportunity to enter up to 25 diagnosis codes inside the service note that all map to the 485. Of course, only your top 6 would be transmitted with the OASIS. Anything that's a round radio button, those are single select, so you'll only be able to pick one or the other for those. And you just hit next. You go through your entire note. Some of these sections are marked as required sections. You would get errors if you did not answer those. You do have links for copy previous data in some of your sections. If there is a completed service note, they would all be displayed right here, and you can choose the most recent one, and it will even tell you what discipline, et cetera, did those visits and the date. So you can pick the most recent one of your same discipline if it's a section like that. If there is a required section, you would be able to see that it is required up here under the change section. This way you don't have to hit next to go through. You could skip around, but anything required is going to be read until you enter information in that section to satisfy those edits. Let me skip to integument. On the integument section, you do have the Add Edit Wound Assessment option. If you click on that, you do get a copy of the human body here. You can click anywhere on that body where the wound is, choose your wound location from the list, and then type in your wound description here. And it will number them from number 1, number 2, number 3, so on, as you enter those wounds. And you can add as many as you need to. I know that's not the left, but now this wound image flows to every service note after this. So they'll be able to click on it and see what wounds and the wound descriptions that you've entered. If during that follow-up visit that wound is decided to be healed, you can click on that wound up here in under the wound detail, and there's a little checkbox here that says is resolved. You can mark it as resolved and hit save, and it'll change that wound from red to green. And then so that'll show it as resolved. Now you do have the option, let me zoom in again. You do have the option to show all. It's going to default to that when you get here, but you can show only the unresolved or show only resolved if you wanted to, and it'll filter down to just those that you choose. And then when you're done looking at that, you can hit save or close. When you do have wounds, we do strip out the wound sections and we put them in what we call apply on demand. Up here in the top, or kind of the top right, you have this link that says apply on demand sections. If you click on that, you're going to get a list, a pop-up window of all of the apply on demand sections, and these may change here in the future, but you will have all of your wound documentation in here as well. You do have diabetic foot exams, IV, lab, mini mental status is in there as on demand now, but all your wounds are going to be down in here. So pick a checkbox next to every one that you need to apply. You've got burns, diabetic ulcers, other wounds, pressure ulcers, surgical wounds, and venous ulcers. They're a little bit geared more towards those specific wound types, and then we have the others as well. So pick all that up, apply, and hit save. And it'll flicker and take me back to the header and supply section. But now if you go down here by the integument, you're going to see those 2 wounds are added in. You do need to go ahead and document on them, or at least type in some data. If you have to save and close, if there's no data in there, they will be removed, and you have to just put them back in. Once those are in, they are documented against, and you save your note, complete your note, those wound sections are automatically going to flow into all the subsequent service notes as well. And then if you don't need it, again, just don't enter any information, save and close, and then those sections will remove. Up here at the top, you do have the Orders tab. This one's a little bit dated now because we now have this Orders and Care Needs tab, but this will show you your recent orders, the verbiage in it, your frequencies and durations for each discipline, as well as all the verbiage that's in those boxes, Locator 21. So you can view that here, but on the Orders and Care Needs tab, you can actually view all of your orders and even edit your orders while you're inside of your service note in the edit mode. You can even adjust your care needs from here as well. There is a Medications tab up here, and I told you guys on the last training when we went over the Meds tab that this would be in here. It is identical to the Meds tab, and it functions identically. You can add meds here, change dosages, you can approve the med profile. Everything you can do on the Meds tab you can do from here. And it's simultaneous with the Meds tab, so as you make changes in here, those changes will be reflected in real time. Same thing for your orders. And then you can come back to your service note and fitness documenting. There may be times, especially on starts of cares, rocks, and research, that you're not going to be able to finish the documentation in the home. So if that's the case, what you would do is just go ahead, when you're ready to leave the home, go back to the header and supply section, go ahead and enter your timeout, and it'll automatically calculate the duration for you. Now, I know you may not be doing the electronic signatures yet, but I'll just show you real fast. If you are going to use electronic signatures, choose electronic underneath this drop-down, and then you'll see this Enter Signature link show up. You'll click on that, and it'll open up a box that the patient can sign in, and you can clear this out if the signature isn't good, but once it's good, just choose Accept. When you do apply an electronic signature, it will gray out the time in, time out. That's because the patient attested that you were there on that date from this time to this time. If you ended up having to stay an extra 15 minutes or something at the end of the visit due to some reason, to adjust that time from here, you have to remove the signature. It'll ungray out that time. You can adjust it, and then you just go back through that process and enter that signature again. And for now, I believe you're not using electronic signature, so your only other options are the not required paper or signature on file, so you would choose one of them. If that's the case, you can still edit your time if needed. And if you realize you make a mistake and you did have an electronic signature, that time can be corrected if you let the office know. Upon verification, they're able to adjust those times and correct them. So once you get your signature done and all that, you would just hit Save and Close, and that will save every bit of this note so that you can come back into it when you have time. You can see now that a service note attached, there's a little note icon to the left of the patient's name. Those are the service notes. If you hover over it, it'll tell you if it's an open or a completed status. If it's completed, you're done with it, unless it goes through QA and they mark it as incomplete, and you'll get a message about that, so you can go in there and correct it as well. So you click on the visit. You can see your menu options have changed. Now, if there is a note, you don't have the option to add one, but you have the option to view the one that's there and edit it, and you can even do the OASIS analysis from here. And if you have security permissions, you can even remove the service note and start from scratch. Otherwise, the office may have to remove it for you. So to go back into your note, you're going to choose the Edit Paged OASIS Integrated Assessment. And it's going to bring you right back into your note. You can finish your documentation. At the end of it, you would choose this Analyze. On the Discharge OASIS, you actually have an Analyze and Compare, and you would be able to compare the discharge oasis to the most recent rock or the start of care, and it'll show you where you've improved or declined in that patient through the service. But on your starts of cares, you're just going to have the Analyze button. You'll click on that. And let me zoom this in. And you're going to get this OASIS analysis report. Anything blue will just show you there's maybe some inconsistencies between two of your questions, especially with your mobilities and self-cares. They'll tell you that you answered one way, but the other one a different way, and that usually isn't the case. It may be the case. It just kind of gives you a heads up. Maybe you can rethink that question or whatever. They're going to give you some 5-star and value-based purchasing responses. It'll tell you if you don't have any room for improvement or if you will have room for improvement, just depending on how you answered those questions. Anything that's in red is a fatal. CMS will reject the OASIS if anything is red on here. Most of these are just because I didn't fill this completely out, and so it's giving me fatals for those unanswered questions. If you do have unanswered questions in your service note, it will prevent you from being able to complete it in the first place. But if something was, there still could be something that's a fatal on here, so always run your analysis and make sure you clear that up, and it'll tell you exactly what it is. So it's a pretty neat tool. And then when you're done with it, you would mark it as approved. If there are errors, which there will be, you're going to get a list of these errors here. So these are all because I didn't answer required fields. Just to correct that, all you have to do is click on those errors, and it will take you directly to where you need to answer those questions. There is skip logic in here, so if you do answer questions a certain way and you're supposed to skip to a following question, we remove those questions you're supposed to skip for you, like we did here. So that's another good thing about this stuff. But you would correct all your errors. As soon as you are done with that, you would hit approve, and as long as there's no errors, you'll get your signature box up, and all you have to do is choose accept on that. And that'll be the service note portion. You'll be completed with that. The next thing you'll have to do is go back to the patient encounter. So again, the fastest way to do that is to click on the patient name, choose View Patient Encounter, and this will take you directly into that patient's encounter. Again, you can check and make sure any of this other additional information is correct that's in here. Intake will put most of it in there. You may want or choose to add patient contacts, any additional notes, internal communication notes you guys can add. Again, you can look at that referral information that might be on this referral. If there's no information there, if it's not sufficient, the Documents tab, they may have the referral order already scanned and uploaded, so you can review information that way. Again, you'd have to come to the Clinical tab and add your vital sign perimeters. We went over that on that last meeting. Again, these flow to your 485 automatically, and they let you know if you're inside that service note and you enter a vital sign outside of that range. It'll give you a heads up with that little red icon and with a white exclamation point in it. So be sure and add your vital signs here. Your disaster plan will pull from the Start of Care service note. There is a question in there for that. You can add advanced directives here, and again, the advanced directive narrative is under the current encounter on the Profile tab. You would choose Edit. Your DNR status is here, and then the advanced directive narrative is here. You need to update that information and hit Save. Your meds, of course, you can do that from within your note, or you can do that here as well. Get those added. Check before you start doing your frequencies and durations, check your payer to see if there is auth required and what auth has been entered so that you know you're scheduling within your means. So you'll see that here we have the PT from 4.5 to 6.5. We got the 80 units, so you know you can plot that many visits. Quick way to get back out of this payer, if you go in here, instead of going back to the encounters and trying to research your patient, you can just hit Enter Encounter right here, and it'll back you up to the patient encounter. okay? So then all the rest of the work is going to be done right here on the Orders tab. This 485 will be initiated when the patient is activated, and then you're going to go into this 485 through the Edit pencil to do your frequencies and durations and any other additional information. You can see here those meds pull over, that diagnosis pulled over. All of these locators will pull over when you complete that start of care note, so you won't have to refill that out. Just double check that everything is correct. And then you're going to come down here to the scheduling portion, and you may have other disciplines in here that are working on this their stuff as well. Of course, you're only going to worry about your discipline and home health aides if you guys have to do those. So your start of care visit is already in here as a 1 week 1. If you click on that PT 1 week 1, you'll see that Monday visit was already checked. Leave that alone. Don't adjust that. If you need to see the patient again this week, then you're going to click on that 1 week 1, and you're going to add an additional visit for this week. If you're going to go ahead and see them 2 times a week for 4 weeks, you're going to adjust the duration to 4 weeks, and then you'll hit update. Now these are color coded, so you can see the PTs are green, and I do have 2 times a week for 4 weeks. Be aware, if the first of the month falls on any day besides a Sunday, that you're going to see this last week, it's going to be duplicated on the first of this week. That way we can get all of those May visit dates in this calendar, as well as all of the April dates in this one. So it will duplicate. So if you count and it looks like 2 week 5, just make sure that that week is not duplicated at the top or bottom of any of those calendars. Once you get your 2 week 4 in there, if you come back down here, you're going to start on the following week after that 4th week. So now I'm blank, and then if I wanted to move down to 1 time a week, I can pick my preferred day. And if I want to go to the rest of the episode, I could choose for the whole 5 weeks or whatever you guys want. And you hit add. You'll see you can visualize these visits up here. Some other things you can do, first of all, to do any kind of corrections, you do have to work your way backwards from the most recent visits you plotted back to the beginning of the where the error was made. So if I did want to correct this frequency, even if I wanted to correct the 2 week 4, I have to come down here to the most recent one and then either adjust this one if that's the one that was a mistake, or just hit X to remove that, and then you can come back to the most recent scheduling that you have there, and then you can adjust it. So maybe I wanted to go for the full 9 weeks instead, 2 times a week. Okay, and that'll plot those. Some other things that you may end up doing is, let me fix this real quick. If you do a 0 week, if you need to skip a week, what you would do is come down here, you plot your the first part of your frequencies, and then for the week you're going to skip, all you're going to do is leave the amount blank. Don't choose any of those, and then for the duration, how many weeks do you want to skip? We'll just say we're going to skip 1 and hit add. And so that's going to address the PT 1 week 1 here for this week of April 5th. Now I've got a 0 week 1 that covers the week of the 11th. And so now when I do more scheduling, it's going to start for the week of the 18th. And then you can put your days in there and duration, how many weeks you want to do that, and hit add. So you can see we have the skipped week, and then we have the 2 week 1 right here. Just so you know, we have a rule turned on to remove the 0 week 1 when you print your orders and send them to the physician, because auditors hate that. So what it'll do is it'll say, effective April 5th, 1 week 1, and then it'll say effective, it'll start on that following week, and it'll say effective 4/18, 2 week 1, so it completely removes that 0 week 1 when it prints. That being said, these frequencies and durations do print automatically in front of your discipline or after your discipline on the orders, and it's going to be 100% correct if you let it print here. So you do not have to retype your frequencies and durations in your order description. If you did, it would show up twice, back to back, and it'll look really weird. Plus, if there's any kind of discrepancies between what you write and what the computer prints in front of it. It won't be consistent. You can get, have to do a frequency clarification order down the road to correct that. So let the computer print this, and you'll always be correct on your frequencies and durations. If you do need to schedule for another discipline, just choose the little drop-down box and pick which discipline. So if you guys are putting home health aides in there as well, you would choose the home health aide discipline and schedule them as well. The other things we have as far as the different frequencies, we do have, it's going to default to the weekly, which is the most common version for home health. If things are plotted as a weekly frequency, you would be able to drag and drop the visits anywhere within that Medicare week. It would not let you drag it outside of that week, so you wouldn't be able to move it to a following week, and that's to keep you guys compliant. So be aware of that. So there is also different frequency types. There's a daily frequency. This would be if you're going to go more than one time a day, or if you're going to plot a visit on a specific day and you do not want that visit to be moved. You cannot drag and drop a visit that's been scheduled as a daily frequency. But you would choose the how many times a day or how many days you want to go. We'll just put a couple on there for now. And you can see it's going to plot the 2 times a day for however the duration that you choose. Okay. The other frequency types we have is the Q. This one would be like if you were going to go every 3 days for 36 days. It would plot a visit every 3rd day for 36 days. I don't see this one being used too often. There is a monthly frequency if you needed to go, 1 time a month for 2 months, 2 times a month for 2 months, whatever you wanted to do there, and you would be able to drag and drop these visits within that range. And the last one is your PRN visits. The PRN visits will not physically go on the calendar. There's an additional step for plotting PRN visits. But to get the order for them to be available, choose the PRN frequency type and then choose how many PRN visits you want, and then hit add. And again, you won't see them up here, but you'll see them somewhere else. So that's how you're going to do your scheduling portion here. And again, these visits that you just scheduled and plotted on here, they're not physically on the patient's calendar yet. You want to make sure you get your frequencies and durations the way you want it before you even come down here to the bottom and choose scheduled discipline. When you hit scheduled discipline, it's going to put them on the calendar, but the second you assign them to a clinician, or if there's a scheduling note attached or a service note attached, or the service has been verified or anything like that, anything's attached to that visit, it will it'll gray out your discipline, and it'll put a little padlock next to it. Sorry, do you have a question?
Yeah, hi, this is Jamie. They're probably not going to be scheduling themselves, so this is a good, look into it, but we're probably going to have the schedulers doing most of this, so.
Okay. Are you guys going to have them, the nursing or therapies, just tell the schedulers the frequencies and durations?
We have to work that part out. Yeah, so.
Okay.
So we're not going to generate visits anymore? I mean, like what we're doing, generating. That's kind of what he's talking about.
Right, you generate, but you don't have to assign it to yourselves. Kathy will figure out where they're all going to go. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is great. I'm just saying the more and more detail, they probably don't need as much just yet because we still will have the schedulers doing a lot of that.
Yeah, I'm not going to go through how to assign them.
Okay, great.
I think,
thanks.
Yeah, but this is how you just do your frequencies and durations, and it'll put the visits on the calendar when you hit schedule discipline, but it doesn't do any of the assigning. That the schedule she'll do that part. So anything that locks down the frequency, if you plot any visits or services directly inside of an order, then it's going to get locked down the second something ties to it. So you would be able to click on this little padlock, and it'll tell you the reason any of those visits are locked down. It's going, like I said, it's going to be because of it's assigned to a clinician, a scheduling note, service note verification, anything like that. But this would tell you why. And the only way to unlock it would be to remove it and back things up to where it's in an unassigned status with nothing attached. So that's why it's really important just to go ahead and make sure you have it the way you want it. Otherwise, by the next visit, when somebody goes out there and sees them, there's nothing you can do to really back them up without deleting that service note. You can download it and re-upload it, but it's not going to be the same, and you don't want to go through that down that road. So the best way to fix a frequency issue is with another order if you've gone too far. So just make sure you're good to go before you ever actually put those visits on the calendar. The other thing you'll need to do is when you do address your discipline, it will open up this edit order description box. This is where you would enter your orders. Again, you don't have to use your double type your frequencies and durations, but I see your agency has put different orders in the physician suggested text, and then some of them are permissions. This little blue icon right here, a little folder icon, if you click on that, it's going to pull up all your suggested text that's available. It does tell you what discipline these are geared towards, but you can just click on whatever applies to you and then hit save, and it pulls that verbiage into this box. Then all you have to do is edit this verbiage to be patient-specific. And then once you fill this out, you do need to hit update before you do anything else, because that verbiage would be lost if you hit save and close, schedule discipline, or if that order was to get approved with this open, that verbiage would be lost. We're going to look at adjusting that, auto-saving it or something, but we're not there yet. So always hit update after you've edited this order description. All right, the next thing you do in the 485, all of this stuff, your disaster information, plan of care, willingness, all of these will pull from your service note, so you don't have to double document. Your rehab potential and discharge plans will pull from your service note as well. For the goals, you need to address those. We are going to do, I'm going to show you something that we do called care needs, which are your interventions and goals. They merge onto your orders, and they also flow into your service notes. So those are the ways to go. But you do need a lot of agencies are just saying see care needs right here. But we will have a locator 22 next to those goals. So it's up to you guys. You just need it just all needs to be on that 485. Your advanced directives will pull from that clinical tab, the narrative again from the, and the DNR status from the profile tab. Your vital sign parameters pull over, and your reason for homebound would be here as well from your service note. So it all maps here. There's literally no double documentation that I can think of in here. For PDGM, they nowadays, as of the first of this year, we have to send the first wrap within the 5 days within that admission. The system's going to look for two things to satisfy the edits. It's going to look for your verbal or your clinician signature and the verbal order date, and it's going to look for that either on the 485 or the referral order. Since you guys aren't putting in the referral order, I recommend as soon as you can go into the 485 and at least sign it. Just click on the enter signature and hit accept to get your name on there. That'll satisfy one of the edits for the wraps to drop. Even if you're not done with your 485, even if other disciplines are still working on it, just get the signature there to get it out of the way so we can release those wraps as quickly as possible. The other thing that the system's going to look for is that first billable visit, that start of care visit, has been verified. So once it sees the signature, the verbal order date, and it's been verified, the system's automatically going to create the wrap to be transmitted. Okay. So even if you're not done with anything else, just go ahead and get this signed. You can come back into this order anytime you need to. When you do the scheduling, those do not go on the calendar until you hit schedule discipline. So that'll be your next step. If you don't do any calendar changes, you could just hit save and close to get out of there. But if you did, be sure and hit schedule discipline so those do get on the calendar so the scheduler can assign those. When you hit schedule discipline, it does save and close everything, puts those visits on the calendar so that the schedule can do it. And then your next step is going to be to add the care needs for your discipline. So to do that, you hover over the action item menu next to the 485, and you're going to choose Attach Care Needs. You're going to click on that, choose the start date. The start date is typically the beginning of that episode, but some things could be, the patient may be on bed rest for 2 weeks and you're not going to start this intervention till 2 weeks later, so you could put a future date here for this specific need if you needed to. You're going to choose your discipline. Now for therapy, you only have to do it for PT, and it will show up for PTAs as well. Same thing with OT and CODA. You just have to do it for the one, and it'll work for both of them. So you'll choose the PT. You're going to get a list of what care needs are in there, and then you're going to go through and find them. Now for the therapies, we have them easily separated for OT, PT, ST. So you'll just scroll down to that, or if you're even up here and you want to just search for PT, this will filter it down to the ones that just have the PT or the word P, those 2 letters in there. So you may get a couple extras. So you'll pick which one or all that apply to this patient. And then you do have a level here if you guys want to choose which one, priority level. We have high, low, and medium in there. That way when you're in the home document, and it'll show you this is a higher level. Maybe you should do this one first in case you don't have time or the patient can't tolerate the lower level ones. So that's one way you can identify them if needed, or you can leave it blank. It's not a required field. And then you can just hit save. Now you're going to see those populate down here underneath your OASIS. So you're going to see the care needs section on your orders tab. So you're going to look for your 2 that you just added or however many you had. Hover over the little action item menu next to that, and you're going to get the option to add interventions. You're going to want to do this for both and add goals for both. Pick all that apply. Again, you can leave this blank, and it will just default to the start date of the care need. If you want to future date that for any reason, you could, but they will not show up inside the service notes until that date arrives, which may be something that is beneficial, maybe not. The end date, you can put an end date in here, but especially with the goals, you may intend to reach a goal within 2 weeks, but you may not. And if you put an end date in here, then as of that end date, it will no longer be in your service notes. You could lose track of that, whatever. So I think it's beneficial to leave it open-ended. And then if they meet their goal, then you can open up a clinical update order, and you'll be able to adjust these and end date the ones that no longer apply, and you can add new ones that apply now. So it's up to you. That's how those dates will work. Hit save when you get your intervention descriptions in there. And those are editable. If that verbiage isn't correct, you do have the option to edit the intervention description. If you do this, you need to do it pretty much right away. Once this verbiage gets pulled into another service note, so if somebody went and saw the patient the very next day and you didn't have these adjusted, it pulls that verbiage into the service note. It will lock this down so you can no longer edit the verbiage because now it's tied to a service note. The only way you'd be able to fix it at that point is to end date your incorrect verbiage and then add a new intervention or goal and then edit that verbiage. But again, you need to do this pretty quickly. To edit it, you would just click on the description of the intervention or goal, and you would be able to edit that description and then just hit save. If you do edit a description, you'll see these little icons to the right. If you hover over it, it tells you what the original verbiage was, which I didn't change it, so it just thinks I did. When you're done with editing all of your descriptions, you would hit save. You're going to do the same thing with your goals. You're going to add goals. Choose all that apply. These are the ones that have more of a template style because they do need to be patient specific. The goal status, typically when you're creating the plan of care, you're not going to have a status. Those statuses are responses that are in the service note as did they meet it, have they not met it, is it in process, etc. I don't recommend writing anything in this other box unless you want it to go to the order, but this will not show up inside of your service notes. So be aware of that. And again, you can do the start dates the same as the interventions. You can future date them if needed, or leave them blank, and it'll just it'll default to the care need start date, and it'll be open-ended. Hit save. Do the same thing with the edit goals descriptions. Hold on. You'll see those that we just added are here. This one has a low dash in here for a blank space, so you definitely need to fix that one. And just highlight that and just hit the whatever's appropriate for this patient and hit save. And then you can see what the verbiage looks like here. And this is what's physically going to be on the order and inside your service notes. You do have the option to edit the goals, which would allow you to add and remove them if needed. The ones that you already have applied. If you needed to add new ones that are associated with that care need, you just hit on add goals again, and the ones that are still available will show up for you. Same thing with the interventions. Once you're done with all of those care needs, you'll add them to the other care need, the interventions and goals as well. Once you're done with that, you're done with your start of care, unless the note was QA'd and they send it back to you to make changes, and we'll discuss how that process is in a little bit. So that's a start of care. It's pretty straightforward. I'll go over some different order types here in a second. I do want to assign some of these therapy visits. Oh, they're too far in the future. Hold on one second. I want to show you how to do a follow-up visit, a routine visit, and then we'll move on to the different order types and work basket and messages. So let me bear with me for just a second. You guys don't have to do this part, so just bear with me. Okay, so I'll show you the follow-up visits and how that works with those care needs. I only added a couple things in there, so it's not going to be totally complete. So I've got PT revisit here, and I'm going to click on that visit, choose to add a page service note assessment, and then I'm going to choose a regular assessment. So all of your follow-up visits besides OASIS will be a regular assessment as far as your service note type. Here, this service code could be adjusted if needed, or you'll at least be able to see it, identify it. And then you can choose which one is appropriate, whether it's an eval, re-eval, routine visit, PTA routine visit. I'll show you just a PT routine visit for now. And of course, your other disciplines would have your disciplines notes show up in the drop-down. Again, it's going to bring you into the header and supply section of the note. Now, these notes moving forward do have clinical data on the header and supply section, so it's good information to know before you treat your patient. You know, their DNR status, advanced directive mental status, functional limitations, etc. So this is going to be a routine note. It's a way smaller than the other one. Hold on one second, making myself a note. You can see there's way fewer sections in here. But you'll do the same thing that you did on the start of care. You'll put your time in, You won't know your timeout yet. You'll just hit next, and you'll just move through your service note. Now, for the task actions, this is what we created with those care needs, and this is what flows into all the disciplines service notes that you guys create. The home health aides, if you guys set up home health aide care plans, that's almost all they'll see is what you're telling them to do, besides a vital signs section and a narrative section. But for your to respond to these, what you do is on the task action response, you'll click the little drop down, and you're going to document, did you complete it? Was it not applicable this visit, or the patient caregiver refused? So choose what's appropriate. And then you can follow up with how they tolerated this treatment, why this one wasn't applicable, maybe because they this one wore them out, now they're in pain and you can't proceed. So you would document that follow-up information in the comment section next to each one. Maybe the patient caregiver refused because they were short of breath. Just whatever you guys need to document to further explain those interventions and why you did them or how they tolerated them, etc. On the goals section, this is where you're going to mark, is it met, is it still in process, not met, and then add additional comments, like maybe they're 50% through this progress, whatever you guys are used to documenting towards your goals. This is where you document that information. You do have this previous assessment goals. Of course, this is the first note that has any in there, so there isn't any. But if there was, you would actually be able to look at those previous goals and what was documented towards them, the service date, and who performed those. So you'll be able to see the last note, and you can, progress from there, kind of thing. And that's really the only difference between or that's not the only difference. Of course, the OASIS integrated have your OASIS. They have locators that pull to your 485, and then your assessment. Your routines will have the task actions and task goals, and then your assessment. They won't have the locators or OASIS questions. So pretty straightforward. Of course, when you're done with your documentation, you'd go back to the header and supplies section, enter your timeout, and then if and when you do electronic signatures, you choose that. Otherwise, whatever your agency wants you to choose here. And then you would mark it as complete. If there's any errors, again, you're going to get those errors here, correct them, and then you can try to hit complete again, and it will either give you more. See, and these goals and task actions are required to be answered. Then it brings up your signature, and you just choose accept. So that's a routine note. Of course, your eval note is going to have more information in them than the routine notes. So you'll see those differences. And of course, we are working on making changes to those, and you'll probably start seeing some minor changes here and there until they get the way the goal is. So that's that part of it. Now, for the additional order types, I'm going to approve this because you are not going to have options for certain orders, especially orders that deal with frequencies and durations, unless they're in a approved status. Just while I'm here, do you see how it has this PT grayed out and the little padlock? This is what I was talking about. Once you assign a visit or a service note's attached, it will gray these out. So you make sure it's correct. And if you hit that button, it'll show you what service dates and what's going on here. This one's because it's assigned and there's a service note on this one. So just FYI on that. All right, for your different order types, they're all going to be written under the Orders tab. And again, in your service notes, you have that Orders tab as well. So you can do the same thing in there. If you hover over the action item menu for next to the 485 in the episode that you're needing to write that order, so it's going to be whatever the effective date is. If you have more episodes, you can write orders in older episodes for clarifications or corrections, things like that. But typically, you're going to do this for this episode that you're currently in. You're going to have these four are available no matter what. So you'll see them out here in this menu. The add addendum order is it will add visits in addition to what you already have from your previous orders. So it doesn't change what's already on the calendar, but it'll add on top of that. These are more used for those kind of scenarios where a doctor calls and says, hey, I changed the patient's blood pressure med. Can you please go out 3 times a week in a row to check the blood pressure and then send me those results? Well, maybe you only have 1 visit on that week, and you need 2 additional visits for that. And maybe you don't have PRNs that were written for that kind of a, for that purpose. So to add those additional ones, you just choose your discipline, choose the days you want to go. It's going to be based off that effective date. So you're going to be dealing with that first week, and then just hit add, get those visits in there, and you're good to go. And then of course write the verbiage that you need to in here and hit update, and then you can hit schedule discipline and sign the order. That's, again, in addition to what you already have. That's not a good order to use if you're set at 1 time a week for 8 weeks, but now you want to go 2 times a week for 8 weeks. So you try to just add 1 additional week for those 8 weeks. That is not a good order for that. I'll describe a better one for that. The other interim order is just a verbiage box, so it's not going to address any schedules whatsoever. So if you receive an order that does not affect your calendars, this is the one you would use to write in most cases. Again, just document your order inside this verbiage box here, and then sign it, and then all you'd have to do is hit save and close at that point. The lab interim order is it's basically just.
Brendan, let's say the 485 is locked and out for signature with the doctor, and an OT goes out to do their evaluation. What order type would they pick to put in their original frequency? Like they're going to go 2 times a week for 3 weeks. Which order would they use?
Okay.
Brendan? It's frozen.
Brendan, did we lose you? I'm texting him now. I reached him. Actually, something happened to his phone. He's dialing in on his cell phone. He'll be right in. He'll be right with us.
Can you guys hear me now?
We can hear you now, Brendan.
Okay.
It says I'm now the host of the meeting.
Oh, well.
Do you want me to make you the host?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we can go back to that. I don't know what happened. My Ring Central just all of a sudden said it's unregistered. So I'm on my personal cell. Let's see here.
Brendan, it's not letting me make you the host.
It's saying I'm the host already.
Okay.
It's not letting me.
I just got a message on my screen that said I'm now the host.
Can you make me the presenter?
Participants.
Can you see my screen now? Or is it not sharing?
I don't use I use Ring Central. I don't use WebEx. Where am I looking? I mean, it's not giving me the option.
It should be by my name. You should be able to hover over it, and I think there's more options, and you can choose.
Yeah, I did
make
that.
presenter.
It's not under participants. I hovered over your name.
Let me try this. I apologize, guys.
See, those are all grayed out. Yeah, where it says pass keyboard and mouse or share screen, it's all grayed out on my end.
I'm getting issues. I'm in my end, and it's not my. Oh, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hold on, I found another place now. Go ahead.
My internet's gone.
Oh.
I was saying, hold on. Bear with me just 1 second. Let me see if I can do something real fast. Okay. JP, can you hear me?
I can. Any luck? Because I'm not. I mean, it's not letting me. All my things are locked up here. I'm not sure. It says I can share my screen, but everything, all the options are grayed out for me to let you share your screen or to make you the host.
Just 1
How
second.
about here under assign controls? Wait a minute. Well, you don't. If you don't have internet now, I found a place to do it.
I got it back up and running. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to join back in.
Okay, so pass the presenter. There we go. I got it. Hold on. Pass presenter to Brendan. Okay. It says it's now been passed to you.
Okay.
Are you guys still with us? Got real quiet on there, and I hope we didn't lose them.
Right here.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Bear with us a minute. We'll be right with you.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm back on. I think we're good to go. Okay, and I sincerely apologize that I don't have internet problems, but they are doing construction around here, so could have been something with that. All right, so the lab interim order, I think, is where I left off. This is just like an other interim order, but it's going to have it's going to say lab on it. So under the order types over here, it would say lab. So you would write any lab orders there. Now those don't affect frequencies and duration, so you would have to have a visit there. Otherwise, you may need an addendum order if you need a plot a visit as well. There's case communications. These work like orders. They're going to have just the verbiage box in it. This is going to go out with the orders to whatever physician that you selected, and they're going to get this verbiage, whatever it is that you said. Now, these do not require a physician's signature. This is just notifying them of something that you want them to notify. Now, just be aware that these may not get processed super fast. It depends on how fast the agency moves orders. So if it's something important, this would not be the way to communicate with the doctor. You would still need to call the doctor, but then you can actually document that call in this as well and send it back if needed, so you have that. So this is a case communication. Again, they work just like physician orders and are managed with the physician orders. The other order types that we have are all going to be under the add interim order. So when you click on that, you're going to get this little drop-down box and then the effective date. In the drop-down box, you're going to see all of the ones that I just discussed, the addendum, case communication, labs, other. This is the other interim order. You're going to see those in here as well, but then you're also going to see all the additional ones. So the case, or excuse me, we went over the other ones. The clinical update. This is important, especially with PDGM. If a patient ends up with a new diagnosis code, and I know you guys don't do the coding, but I just want to go over it. So if they end up with a new diagnosis code, or if you find out they have an allergy, a new allergy they didn't have before, or their diet changed, their activities permitted, functional limitations, prognosis, mental status, if any of that changes from the 485 or since the 485, then this clinical update order is how you're going to have to add those. It's basically a 485 without a calendar. These are going to be used a lot during maybe a resumption of care if they have new diagnosis, things like that. But we need to get those diagnoses on the encounter so that the billing will end up straight. The other order types we have under there's a discharge discipline. What this will do is, from this discipline, from the effective date for this discipline, it will wipe out any additional visits you have. So you would use this if you were discharging early, if you didn't get to fulfill your frequencies and durations because the patient refused, things like that. You would do a discharge discipline, choose your discipline and the effective date, and it wipes out all those visits so they won't be on the calendar anymore. So that's only if you're discharging early. I'm sorry? Do you have a question?
Can I ask you a question? So I think I know the answer, but I just want to see you do it officially. So the nurses went out, she did her start of care, she ordered PT, she ordered a home health aide, the discipline's got everything on the 45. It's now, let's say, day 15, the 45 is out the door, and we realized that we needed OT. So the order would be written, would it be add addendum order? Because that would get us a frequency. And does that allow us to put the care needs on that order so that when it goes out for signature to the doctor, it has the care needs and the visit frequency?
That would be a difficult scenario. You would actually have to do a couple things and write a couple different orders. The clinical update order is the only other one besides the 485 that you can attach care needs to. So you would need that order type. Again, it doesn't have scheduling in there, so you'd have to have an additional order for your scheduling. And since your 485, and again, as I mentioned before, your 485 and the resumption of care order are the only ones we can plot assessment services in. And remember, if you plot something directly in the order, it's going to lock it down the second you assign it. So if this is, hopefully that's a rare scenario that you guys come across.
No,
but
that's
you may
very
need...
common. It's very common.
Okay. Well, you would have to add an addendum order to get your assessment visit there, and it wouldn't be an assessment service. It would be, but that's the only way you're going to be able to get a visit on the calendar to go assess the patient. Again, it's going to lock down, so that order would be basically just for the eval. You do a 1 week one, and the verbiage of the order, you'd say OT to eval and treat. That will put that visit on there. You won't be able to add additional OT visits to that order because it's plotted within the order. And again, you can only do assessment services on 485s and ROC orders. So in that scenario, you'd have to have one order for your to eval and treat, and then you'd have to, once they eval and treat, then they would add an addendum order to add the rest of their frequency and duration. So you'd have to have two orders for that. And then now that you're talking about, now that you're going to have new care needs, you'll have to have a clinical update to be able to add those care needs.
Okay.
So
Okay, Leslie was trying to write that down. So do you think it's worth stating it again, or should we just all view the recording again, or
one more time.
would you mind, like?
yeah, I mean, I can go over it again. So in that, and I'm only speaking that scenario that the 485's locked and gone, and you don't have a resumption. Resumptions and 485's are the only two orders. You can hover over the action item menu next to them and choose add assessment services, which are the only services that you can plot that do not lock frequencies and durations down when you assign them, etc. So because of that, you would have to write an addendum order for that effective date for that discipline, and it would be just for the eval. And then you can basically say eval and treat, and then you can just approve that order. But then you'd have to write an additional order after they come up with their frequencies and durations, another addendum order, and then that'll give them the option to put in the rest of their frequencies and durations.
Okay. And then how do they get their care needs signed off to the doctor?
And for the care needs, you would do a clinical update order.
Okay.
3 orders.
And then outside of that clinical update order, let me show you.
But you won't write
You'd have
that
to
first.
add it.
Right.
I'm sorry?
No, nothing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Brendan.
Okay. You would add the clinical order and just hit save and close, or clinical update order, and then hit save and close. And then you can hover over the action item menu next to it, and you'll see that option to attach care needs.
Okay.
And then again, those will get merged onto that clinical update and get sent. So unfortunately, in that scenario, you could have up to 3 orders.
Right.
But that's the same. But you could have that same scenario on a resumption of care as well. But the scheduling wouldn't be an issue.
Because in addition, not only is it OT that this happens to, but a lot of times MSW. So we go out, patient seems to be doing okay, they have caregivers in, and now it's 3-4 weeks into the episode and the caregiver quits and the wife is in the hospital and now we need an MSW. It would be the same process, what you just explained. I'm the therapist who decides we need an MSW. I call the doctor, can I get an MSW? Verbal order, he says yes. I would enter the process that you just showed us. First, an addendum order to get the MSW out for that 1 week one, or 1 week, one first visit. Then the MSW goes and does his visit and he comes back and says, I need to see the patient 3 more times, once a week for the next 3 weeks. We write an addendum order to get that frequency, and then we write a clinical update order so that the MSW's care needs can be signed off by the doctor.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. Yeah, that's just, unfortunately, that's just a lot of process, but it's the only way that's available in that. And so in a resumption of care, you'd have those same scenarios where you'd have to, if they have new diagnosis or care needs, you'd have to add that clinical update. But if they don't, you wouldn't need it. But that'd be about the only difference. So the other order types are the missed visit. I don't recommend using this one here because if you cancel the visit on the calendar, which is what the process you guys would do for missed visits, they would get canceled off the calendar, and then it gives you the option to create a missed visit interim order, and then it pulls all that information for, the data service discipline, and it'll show that it's a missed visit. Missed visit orders are just notifications to the doctor. They don't require signatures either. But anyway, I don't recommend using it here. If you can, but you'll still have to cancel that visit off the calendar to deal with that part of it. So you might as well just do it all in one step. Again, the other interim order is just the verbiage box, which is available out here. The replace all, I don't see this one very often, but this will wipe out all disciplines from the effective date of the order. It'll wipe out every service that you have on the calendar, and then it'll give you an opportunity to put them all back in however you need to. I don't see it used too often, but it's available. The replace discipline, this one's really common. This is when their frequencies and durations change. So if you're going one time a week and now you're going to go 2 times a week, you do a replace discipline, and from that effective date forward, it'll wipe out the old calendar for that discipline, and you can plot in the new calendar for that discipline. And it's only going to be based off that effective date. It doesn't, touch anything in the past. This will be used if you're increasing or decreasing frequencies. So that's the one you would use for your discipline. The resumption of care order would be the one, again, this one will plot. On the effective date, it'll plot, you can plot which discipline is going to go out there and do that OASIS. So if you needed therapy out there and you're resuming them today, then you just choose the resumption order, and then all you need to do is save and close the order. And it's going to plot that visit on the calendar, that 1 week one for that clinician. It'll get assigned to them, and then they'll be able to come back into the ROC order and add to their frequencies and durations for the rest of the episode. Now, again, on that ROC, you may need a clinical update if they have new diagnoses, or if any of the, the mental status, prognosis, anything changed. You might need a clinical update order to go along with it. Then, let's see. The summary, this one's a label, just a summary label, but it's a blank verbiage box. You can type in any summary information that you want to send to the physician. These two do not need physician signatures. The summary form is a little bit different. Let me kind of show you what it looks like. It's kind of got a template that you can fill out in there. So you guys may like this one better. You can just fill out that information and again sign it and send it to the physician. And then there's the transfer form. Now this one's a little bit cooler because it'll actually pull in some other information like your orders, which have your frequencies and durations. It'll pull your meds in. It'll pull your goals in. And you can edit this information to say they met the goal or not going to meet the goal, whatever it is you want. Patient outcomes, additional comments, lab data, transfer condition, things like that. So this is a good, I like this form better, but you guys have that other options. Now the discharge summary is going to be you're unavailable until the patient's in a discharge status. All of these discharge ones down here are not going to be available. Let me show you another issue you guys may see. If you guys go to add an interim order, see how a bunch of these are grayed out? You can't even choose them. It tells you right next to it why you can't choose it. Any orders that deal with frequencies and durations need to be in an approved status before it opens up these other ones, because they have to get approved in the right order. Otherwise, the system won't let you do it. But you can imagine if you try to approve them outside or out of order, out of sequence, your frequencies and durations could be anything. So we keep you guys compliant, and we won't even let you adjust that until that other order gets approved. So if you need another order type, it's not available, you may need to call the office and say, hey, I need this order approved so I can write this, replace this, the plan or whatever. On the discharges, you do have to pick an order type. The discharge summary, again, it's a blank verbiage box. The summary form, I'll show you. It's going to look like that transfer form. So the ones that say the word form under it, it'll have this additional information in there. Again, they won't be available unless the order is in approved status, or unless on the discharge it'll be available anytime.
Brandon?
Yeah.
On that discharge form, it looks really good and it will be helpful to us. But does each discipline fill out a discharge form, or is it the last discipline out completes that form? And will any information from the other disciplines flow into that? Or does that populate from any place, or you just, I see the meds obviously populate. So what else, I guess, goes on there?
For the goals, you're going to get them for every discipline. So you have your RNs here, you have your PT here, you have your home health aide here. So that's the only thing that, your meds, your orders, and then goals from every discipline is going to pull
so only
into here.
one discipline will fill this out, the last person out. So if nursing finished 2 weeks ago and the home health aide finished a week ago, and I'm the last person out as the PT, I'm the one who will initiate this form. And this will come up and I'll have already on there, because the nurse is already discharged. Her goals the status of how she ended her goals will be here, the home health aide, and then I just do it. And then is this a form that automatically faxes from Care Efficient to the MD that's listed on here?
Once this order has been approved, it'll get managed with the other ones. So if your physicians do accept faxes and have fax numbers, whoever's responsible for sending orders, we haven't even gone through that portion of the training yet. They'll be able to either send it from here, they can print it and mail, they can fax it to the physician, or there's a global way of doing it under the view print orders. They'd be able to send all the orders at once with a click of a button. They can send everything that's in an approved status.
So you're calling this discharge summary form an order, correct? But is that the language you're using right now? I just want to understand it.
Again, it works like an order. It's not a true order. It doesn't need to be signed by the physician. It just needs, you're just required to notify the physician of the discharge and the progress you made.
Okay. That's good. Thank you.
Absolutely. So that was we're kind of running out of time. That was all the different order types. I do want to show you real fast how to do a resumption of care and that kind of process, because it is a little bit confusing, but I think it'll explain a lot about our OASIS time point sequence logic that's in the system. When a patient goes on hold, you do have to place the patient on hold. They have to be in a hold status before you have the option to do a transfer not DC'd. If the patient is a transfer DC, a discharge, or a death at home, they have to be in a discharge status before you get the option for those 3 OASIS types. So always remember, they need to go into that status prior to you trying to start the note. So if you click on that to add an OASIS integrated and you're not getting the right type, it could be because of their status. They need to be on hold for the transfer no DC, they need to be discharged for the transfer DC, etc. So I'm going to place this patient on hold, and there are times, and you guys have, I'm sure, run into it, that you found out they went into the hospital and came out in between visits, and you still need to get that transfer OASIS in there. So you may already know the off-hold date, but you do not want to put that off-hold date in here yet, because we need them to be in a hold status to be able to add that transfer. So now that the patient, you can see up here under the status, they're on hold. So the next step, you would do 2 things. You'd write an order, another interim order, to tell the doctor the patient was admitted to the hospital. And then the next step would be to do a standalone OASIS. This is without a service note attached, which is most of the time you do a transfer. That's what usually happens. You weren't there for that visit. So you would choose your transfer not DC, hit save, and then it brings you into this order. Now, it doesn't have to be completed to move on. Well, I mean, eventually it does, but to get to the next step, if you're in a hurry to get that rock in there, at this point, you got your transfer in place. You can see it down here under the Oasis. You do add interim order, choose a resumption of care, and the date that you guys are going to go out, and hit save. Oops. Don't do that yet. Don't do that yet. So now that you got your transfer Oasis in there, your next step would be to reactivate the patient. When you reactivate the patient, it's going to ask you, do you want to remove the scheduled services or do you not want to remove the scheduled services? Most of the time, if they go to the hospital, you're going to want to remove those scheduled services and reassess the patient. If the patient went on hold just for patient request and they come back off hold and you're just going to pick up where you left off, you could choose to leave those scheduled services this way. But 99% of the time, you're going to remove them. So from that effective date forward, all those visits will be gone. Now you're going to add the interim order and choose the resumption of care order and the effective date, and then hit save and your discipline, your primary discipline. At this point, you can just leave this alone because you're going to go assess the patient and come back and add to it, and then you can finish filling it out. If additional disciplines need to reassess this patient on the rock as well, this is the one where you can hover over the action item menu and choose to add assessment service, and you can pick the other disciplines that are also going to need to go out there and assess the patient. Choose the requested date, and it's going to put that visit on the date you request. And then those would need to be assigned. Then each discipline is going to go out there, assess the patient, determine the frequencies and durations. The primary discipline will do the rock Oasis, and then every discipline will come back to this order and add to the frequencies and durations because they will not be locked down. And then you can enter your order descriptions. Of course, usually the primary discipline is going to sign the order, and then you'll be done with that part. Now, again, on the resumption, you might need a clinical update order if you need to address interventions and goals and care needs, or if they have new diagnosis, or again, any of those other locators have changed, their diet, activities permitted, mental status, etc. And then that's that. That would be done for that. Of course, the rock would show up here when you guys add that service note, etc. And so the same thing for the discharges. If you don't get to see the patient, you would do a standalone Oasis discharge, whether it's a transfer discharge or whatever type of discharge it's going to be. You do the same thing. You choose to add your Oasis now. I didn't put the resumption in yet, so it's still there as an option. But now you can see I've got my transfer DC, death at home, and DC. And you're always going to have another follow-up after you have a start of care in there. This is for more of a SCIC, that you guys can always do those. But, and then again, if you try to go do your recert Oasis and you don't have the right option, all you see is another follow-up, the system's going to know if it's in the 5-day window. So if it's on the 6th day, then you're not going to get any option but the other follow-up. So again, if you guys don't have your correct Oasis types, make sure they're in the correct status, and make sure that the other previous Oasis are at least in the system. And then that's going to correct where you may have an issue. And see, the only other thing, do you guys have any questions about these orders? I mean, I'm pretty much done with, all of this part. I was going to go into the work basket and unread messages now. Any questions about any of this?
Brandon, we're not going to do work basket yet at our agency. We're not turning that on as a function yet. So I don't know if you need to do that today.
Okay, we can skip that.
Yeah. And what was the other thing you said you were going to do?
The unread messages.
Okay.
The internal messaging system. Did we go over that last time? I usually wait until this. Huh?
I don't remember if you did this yesterday because I didn't listen as much yesterday.
I don't think
But
so.
one thing, I don't know if you did this part yesterday, but I think it would be helpful, and maybe you did, but like I said, I didn't listen. Did you show them how to put notes on the visits to alert the other, the person who's going to see the patient?
Okay, yeah, I can go over that. I don't remember if I
And on
touched
clinical
on that or not. Those there's something we call
Specific
scheduling
visit.
notes that I
Did you guys-
really I'm
Little
sorry.
bit. I just was asking the
He
group.
mentioned it, but he didn't. He said he would do it later.
Okay, so this I think
Okay.
is a good function to go over with us because we do a lot of stuff like this. So, and we
Okay.
have a way of doing it now that is different. So that would be, I think, something great to show them.
Okay. So we do have something called scheduling notes in here, or that's what I call them. It says add note, but it's on a service. So I may be using the wrong terms there, but I'm referring to them as scheduling notes. These are not service notes. So you can see those service note icons. If you have a service note attached, it'll be the same icon, but it's on the left side of the name. If you have one over here on the right side of the name, these are scheduling notes. And if you click on that, it'll tell you important information about that visit. So the way these work, and I'm going to go to an actual patient calendar because it'll make a little bit more sense. So I'm going to go to this patient schedule. Let me get my other test patient, I'm sorry. Okay, so first of all, if you see a note on the right side of your visit, go ahead and click on it and read that note. It may have pertinent information on there. If not, if you need to add a scheduling note to any visit, so say you used all the KT tape that the patient had at the house and you need the next person to come out to bring some KT tape. They may or may not have it as car stock, who knows. You can click on any of those visits, any future visit or past visit, whatever, but it's going to affect the future ones. You can click on those and choose to add a note. This add note is what I call the scheduling note here. So you can put a general note in there and you can let that person know, take out supplies, and then hit save. And again, you're going to see that note to the right side of that visit. So whoever that would have been assigned to, and before they plan their day, they can click on that note and see, okay, I need KT tape. Let me check and see if I have some. If not, I need to go to the office before I go to this patient. So that's just one example. The other things I use these for is if this was a 30-day eval, even though you ordered it in a weekly frequency, you could drag it outside that 30-day. So if this was a 30-day assessment, and I would go ahead and add a note saying this is a 30-day assessment so that if you do need to move your visit, you make sure you move it the right direction and you don't go outside of your window. So that's another good one. For research visits, I used to, every time I'd schedule them, even though the service code may say it's a research visit, I used to put scheduling notes on there and just say, hey, this is the research and the end of episode is 4/8. So you know that you can drag and drop that visit, but you need to drag and drop it within a 5-day window. So those will give you that heads up that there's something important for that. And another example is if there's lab due a certain day, even though there's an order written and everybody should be reading their orders, it's still helpful to have an extra little heads up when you're looking at your schedule to know whether or not there could be a PTI and R due today. And this will let you know, hey, I need to go by the office and get the machine, or need to get supplies to draw that lab, things like that. This will be extremely helpful for any of those scenarios. And you can add them to your own visits. You can add them to other disciplines or other, even of the same discipline, just different associates. But they're extremely, extremely helpful. So that's how you would add one. Just click on the visit, choose add note, choose the note type, and then we can create different labels if you guys ever needed to, but general is usually good enough. And then just type in what you want and hit save. So those are extremely helpful. I don't remember if I hit this with you, the other guys. On the patient calendars, it may be hard to see. This first day is a lime green, this color up here. that's the first day of your episode, whether it's the start of care date or the beginning of the next episode, after you've restarted them. So that's just a color coordination showing you that that's the first of the episode. You also get this little peach color. This is the 30-day mark. This doesn't really, it's not about your 30-day evals, but it's about your PDGM billing and your lupus scenarios. So nowadays you have to bill for the first 30 days and second 30 days, and each 30 days have a LUPA threshold. You may have 4 visits needed in the first and 3 in the second, so on and so forth. Well, if you only have 7 through the whole episode, if you were to drag one of those visits across that 30-day mark, you may create a LUPA scenario for the first 30 days. And that being said, if you drug it back across there, you may create a LUPA scenario for your second 30 days. So be aware of that because of the billing. Sometimes agencies have enough visits, they have nothing to worry about. Some agencies barely schedule enough to be just to hit that LUPA threshold. So even a missed visit would cause a LUPA. So that's what the peach color is. And then on your,
Can you show them where they'll see the LUPA threshold, like where in Care Efficient that they'll be able to tell how many visits they need to prevent a LUPA and where they're at in that process?
It's going to be under this PDGM analysis. I don't think I have an OASIS completely closed, so I'm not sure if we're going to get the information on this. But from the Orders tab, this one does have it. So from the Orders tab, outside of that Start of Care OASIS or Recert OASIS, you're going to see this, the action item menu next to it. You can see the PDGM analysis. If you click on the PDGM analysis, now your OASIS has to be complete as far as your coding needs to be completed because that's going to affect your HERG score. So you can only really truly have an effective view of this after coding's been done. But if you come in here, you can see the LUPA threshold. Here's your projected first 30 days, and then here's your LUPA threshold. This one's only 4 visits for the first 30, and it's 2 visits for the second 30. So bare minimum, you need those so you do not create a LUPA. Anything less is obviously going to be one. If anything's moved outside of either 30-day period, again, it could create one. And then missed visits, of course, can always create them as well.
So that's the place where they'll see it, but there's not something active ongoing as you do visits that says, you've completed 2 of 4 to avoid your LUPA, or once they've done 6 and they only needed to do 4, it won't say you've done 2 more than your LUPA threshold. This system doesn't do that, right?
There's a rule in the system that's warn if it's basically we're going to warn. Let me see the name of the rule. I'm sorry. It's going to say warn if create a LUPA. Let me see.
Because we're very LUPA conscious here. We're always, sending clicks, make sure you get that.
Actually, maybe a payer rule. This one. And it will, if this rule is turned on for your PDGM payer, warn if LUPA impact by change, then you would get a warning if you were to create a LUPA. Same thing with a warn user if moving service outside of the 30-day time frame. That'll let you know if you're not looking at that orange or peach color on the calendar. This will just give you a warning that that you are crossing that 30-day period.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Was that what you planned to show us today?
I'm sorry?
We're at 10:30, so did you get to complete what you planned to show this group?
Yeah. Since we're not going to discuss Workbasket, the only other thing was the unread messages that we didn't really discuss. It's pretty simple. I'll really tell you here is that, check your messages frequently. You guys can send messages. If you click on the unread messages, it's kind of like an email system. You will get notes in here like this one. If your service note was QA'd and they send it back to you, you're going to get a QA. It's going to tell you the patient, everything. If you click on the service note review, it'll take you to the service note tab so that you can edit that service note and correct it. Otherwise, you're going to get other just messages back and forth about different patients, different things that they want you to be aware of. And again, you can actually send messages yourself. If you were to click on the send message, you can send messages to specific teams or specific disciplines or specific users. So you can come in here and you can pick as many users as you need. And then type in your message here and hit send, and it will send it to whatever filters you have here or users you entered here. And then just hit send, and then they'll get that message. They can reply back. Let me show you. You have the option to reply. You can mark it as read. You can, if there is previous messages, you can view the whole thread. It's the same thing as hitting show more. It'll show you all the information in there. You can reply to the sender, reply to all. You can forward this, and then you can delete it. So it's kind of like an email system. It is HIPAA compliant. It's all within Care Efficient, so you don't have to worry about PHI or anything like that. You can also filter these to just the open. It'll default to open messages, but you can filter to your read messages, sent messages, and deleted messages as well. And then you can also search keywords for those messages if you're looking for a specific name or anything else. You can type that in and hit search, and it'll view the message for that name.
And Brendan, this is not part of the patient's chart, right?
Correct. Not at the moment.
Okay.
We're gonna look into ways to be able to tag a patient, but as of right now, this is not part of a patient record.
Okay, thanks.
Uh-huh.
Does anyone have any questions for Brendan? Mary Ann?
It's maybe for Brendan. Are we gonna be able to move visits, or is that something where we're still gonna click Kathy and say we need to move from Tuesday to Wednesday?
We haven't decided. I'd like to say that. Okay, it's not.
I was talking about dragging and dropping, so I
Yeah.
was curious, just to kind of show us that maybe.
I can, well, he'll show you.
Okay,
You just
I don't know if you heard that.
click on it and move it to the right.
Okay.
It's literally dragging.
Literally, okay.
You literally just pick it up and drag it, move it to the next day or the correct day. And again, you may get warnings. See, this one, service date is not in the 30-day service window, so click OK to sign anyway. So that's that one warning already. So you can drag and drop them. It will not let you move it to another day or another week, excuse me. If you ordered it in a weekly frequency, if you ordered it as a daily frequency, you would not be able to move it at all. And again, that's a security permission and an internal discussion if you guys are going to be able to manage those schedules. But be aware of those LUPAs when you're doing so. Be aware of your 30 days evals. Make sure you don't move them past that. And then same thing with your research. Make sure you're not moving those around outside of the 5-day window. But and again, that's up to your agency as far as whether or not you're going to have the permissions to do so. Right now, you do.
Okay, any other questions for Brendan? No, good. And Brendan,
Awesome.
just so you guys know, he records this and then it'll be on the intranet. So you could always reference what you saw today with Brendan. And he's doing another one this afternoon with the other group of therapists. So that will be recorded as well. Okay, thanks so much, Brendan.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. You guys have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
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 Bye.